Let's move back to the mini budget that came out this afternoon. Welcome news from that statement is that the 350 Rand a month social relief of distress grant will be extended by another year to March 2024. But the minister has cautioned that it's a game of trade-offs. He's still mulling whether he can give a cost of living increase for other social grants. What could this mean for those in need, children, the elderly, those with disabilities? I'm joined now by Black Sash Director Rachel Bukasa. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us this evening. So first of all, the news that we're going to have another year of this 350 Rand a month grant, it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but does that mean potentially the difference between life and death for some?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Sally. It's absolutely a lifeline for other people. What might sound like a dinner for two for other people, it's completely something that others rely on to pay school fees, get food on the table, without which they are left destitute and quite frankly hungry. So yes, absolutely a major difference for the majority of South Africans who are relying on this grant.
However, and I think let's at this point take a listen to what the minister had to say, because he does seem to be quite cautious about what this might mean for other grants. So we're going to play that clip and come back to you. Let's take a listen.
Government has said extend it until March 2024, okay? In the meantime, we have got to design a benefit structure for vulnerable people in South Africa. If we can finalize that before 2024, March 2024, well and good. If we have not finalized before 2024, it may well be that we may, I don't know. All I've done, if you look at the budget book, I've penciled numbers over the MTF so that I should be on safe ground.
Does it affect other existing grants? In what way?
Sure, there are trade-offs. There are trade-offs. For instance, we would have liked to have increased the police by 30,000 over the MTF. But because of the grant, we couldn't do so.
Sure, there are trade-offs, says the minister. Do you have more details on what those trade-offs might mean?
You know, I think the minister is taking this from the perspective, from a purely fiscal perspective and not a human rights perspective. And he's also not considering the perspective that actually there's a constitutional obligation on the government to ensure comprehensive social security, progressively ensure that. And so to be quite frank, I think that those words are quite manipulative, trying to pit grants against each other. So because we've got this grant, this other one won't increase according to inflation because it's a trade-off. Well, actually, why can't the trade-off be against all the money that is being lost to corruption? Why can't the trade-offs be there? Why can't the trade-off being with all the funds that's being mismanaged, but rather other grants? And so I think it's important that particularly as a minister and as government generally, we realize that grants are not a favor the government is doing to people. It's because the systems have failed. There's no jobs for people. There's no food. There's hunger and poverty. This is what needs to sustain people until government gets its act together. So quite frankly, Minister, no one's getting a favor here. This is a constitutional obligation that should be done. And your trade-off should be with other things and not pitting grant recipients against each other.
What are you going to do now? Because it seems like there's a bit of time to sort of figure this out. How do you move forward to make sure that other grants aren't compromised?
So it's actually not our job to ensure other grants aren't compromised. Other grants should not be compromised because those grants are things that have been provided for. And so I think what needs to happen here is that the minister needs to go back to the drawing board and figure his stuff out, because it is not correct to say that because X is getting Y, Z cannot get something else. That is not correct, and that's not how the Constitution at least envisioned this working. If there are areas of trade-off, I can guarantee you that what the Constitution did not envision was from one poor person to the other. And so currently, from the Black Sash's perspective, is we're going to study the minister's budget. We're going to study it, take some time, and then figure out next steps forward. But I think it's a dangerous precedent to peddle that because of the 350, other people are not going to be getting increases. That's not accurate to say, and I don't think that's a fair statement at all. I think what it does is it makes vulnerable people already feel further prejudiced and judged. and that's not how it should be.
Every year that we see an extension of the social relief of distress grant, I would imagine it's going to make it more and more difficult for government to stop that grant because it's starting to feel like a permanent feature. Do you feel that this is edging government closer to a basic income grant?
Well, I think the only reason government is finding themselves in a position where they had to extend this grant is because they haven't moved on working towards a basic income support grant. Had they done that all these years, I think we would have had a very different conversation. And every time you bring it up, the conversation is, well, we can't afford it. We're going to go into further debt. I think as civil society, not just as Black Sash, with other organizations, we've categorically proven that this is not true. What we've said to the minister, the finance minister, as well as the president, was that get a room of economists together, get different people together, including civil society, and we can show you 18 different ways that this grant can be afforded without getting into further debt or taxing or that kind of thing. Their refusal to do so shows that the issue here is not affordability. The issue here is simple political will. Because if there was political will and you were saying it was purely affordability, I don't see why you have a problem against other people showing you how it can be done.
Give me just a couple of examples. You say it can be done without further taxes. So give me a couple of the suggestions on how it can be done.
So there are a lot of studies that's been done. I can't think of some off the top of my head, but around how we tax them and we phase. It depends on how much the grant comes in for and how long it takes. So even according to the government's numbers, if the grant is done at 350 over the next while, it doesn't even come to 2% of our annual budget. And so an increase in that, even when the argument is that within 5 years it would be at double that, that's still around, what, 4% of the budget. And I think that that is something that can be figured out. What we've done is that there's a series of studies. It's not that the information is not available. As Black Sash, we've done them. SPY, other organizations have done them. And so I think the issue here is that it's not affordable, it's that you don't want to hear that it's affordable. And now getting to a place where you want to pit one grant or shame one grant recipients and saying that they are the reason another person is not getting an increase, I think that is really dangerous precedent to set.
Thank you so much for chatting to us this evening, Black Sash Director Rachel Bukasa.